What is up, guys? We are back again with another video, and in today's video we are going to talk about how to plan effectively. That's what we're going to talk about, but the reason we're going to cover this is because this is actually where a lot of people fall down in terms of actually trying to achieve their goals and actually achieving what they want to achieve in life, right? You can have a grand idea, a grand plan of action in your mind, but if you actually don't sit down and actually plan that out, the steps that are required to do that, look, it's all useless at the end of the day, because 9 times out of 10, nothing actually gets done. You have this grand vision, this grand idea, but there's no implementation strategy, right? And there's a few things that you can implement that really make this a lot easier than it needs to be, right? Or makes it a lot easier than you usually find it, right? So what we're going to talk about today is actually mapping things out ahead of time. So in the last video I talked about my goals. I was talking about, okay, this is the year plan. I obviously didn't go through the whole year, but I was, planning ahead. I have this thing coming up and I have this thing coming up. So I'm making a plan ahead of time, and I'm making it in a way that I'm like, okay, this is what I want to have accomplished in this time frame. This is what I want to have accomplished in this time frame. I have this goal. If you've been following the series, I have this 5-year goal where, at the end of it, I want to have achieved a certain outcome, a certain adaptation. So I've broken that down into smaller, more manageable, more achievable chunks, and I'm very clear on the process, right? So the first thing with all of this stuff is you have to be very clear on what your goals actually are, because in today's video and today's lesson effectively, we're going to talk about how you actually put that into what you need to do day to day, week to week, all that kind of stuff, right? So again, first thing first, we need to be very clear in our goals, right? What are we actually aiming towards? And then what we need to do is we need to look at the process goals within that, and then we need to break down and extract the tasks that need to be done on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, on a year-to-year basis, whatever it is, right? We need to actually extract out those tasks. We need to actually write them down so we're very clear on, okay, this is the task list, right? This is exactly what needs to be done. You can also prioritize them. You can literally rank them and go, these are the top priority things. These are the things that are moving the needle the most. So these are the things that need to be 100%. I need to make sure that these are done. And then there's other things that, okay, if they get done, happy days. But if they don't get done and they get pushed off, it's okay, right? We need to be very clear on that. So we need to make that task list. We need to make it out. And again, I always find writing this stuff out is really therapeutic, because if you try to keep it in your mind, you go, oh yeah, I have this, what was that task again? I think I need to do. You're kind of always back and forth, right? Whereas if you write it down, it really helps you get clear on this stuff, and it also helps you see that a lot of the tasks that you think are, oh, I need to be doing this, or I need to be doing this, they're kind of useless tasks. They're not actually bringing you closer to your goal. And this is the same in your health and fitness stuff, the same in your education, the same in your career. If you run a business, there is that saying where it's the 80% is contributing, or 20% is contributing to 80% of the results. So the 20% of the work that you're doing is contributing to 80% of the results that you're getting. So we want to focus on and make sure that 20%, that we're doing that to the best of our ability. And ideally, we're making sure that, it's not just taking up 20% of our time, it's actually taking up a little bit more of our time, because we're focusing on it more, because that's the 20% that is yielding 80% of the results that we want to achieve, right? So we need to be very clear on our task list. Once we do that, this is where everyone falls apart, right? Well, most people fall apart before that. They don't even write out their goals, right? So let's assume you've done that. You've written out your goals. You're very clear on it. You have a rough time frame, a little timeline for this stuff. You've actually written out the tasks that need to be done to actually achieve that goal, to accomplish that goal. The next thing is we need to actually schedule that out, right? And then we've scheduled it out to some extent if we've created that timeline, but we need to schedule it out in terms of, this is what needs to be accomplished by this week, this month, etc. And then also we need to schedule it out on a day-to-day basis, right? And what I mean by this, when people think of a schedule, they think of this very strict, rigid, oh, I'm going to do this at 12:05, and this is, I'm going to do it at 12:07. That's not what we're talking about, right? We need to have a schedule for the stuff that we do every day, right? If you're going to do stuff every day, say for example, let's say you cook your food every single day, you need to know when you are cooking that. It can't be haphazard, because you see this all the time in health and fitness, where people are like, oh, I want to gain weight, and they know they need to eat 3,000 calories, for example, right? And they know that, and every single day they're struggling to do that because there's no actual implementation strategy. There's no actual schedule to their meals. There's no this is, breakfast, this is lunch, this is dinner. There's none of that. They wake up haphazardly and they go, oh, look, I'll get food when I'm out. Then they get food. It doesn't really fit their calories, their macros, but it's like, okay, it's somewhat contributing. And then later on in the day, they're like, oh, I actually haven't eaten enough. So, at the end of the day, they're trying to ram in 2,000 calories odd, and they just can't stomach it. They can't, eat that many calories in that one meal. So they fail at hitting their goal, right? Because they didn't have a structure, they didn't have a schedule, they didn't have a system, and they didn't have those processes to stay on point, right? So we need to schedule this stuff out. So if you need to cook food every day, when are you doing it? Are you doing it first thing in the morning? Are you cooking tomorrow's food tonight? Are you doing it batch cooking? Like, what are you doing? You need to actually schedule that out, and you also need to schedule out stuff like, when am I going to cook the food? When am I going to buy the food? When am I going to organize, to do the groceries? Am I going to go out and do it? Am I going to, get it delivered? What's the story there? We need to have a very clear plan of action. We need to schedule that out. And the reason we're scheduling all this stuff out is because we don't want to think we have more time available than we actually do, right? So if it takes an hour to go do your groceries, cool. You need to schedule that out. When is that being done? Right, it's a Sunday. I'm doing it this time, right? You need to schedule that out so that that's an hour that you can't have other stuff going on, right? Or you have to take away from the other stuff that you want to do. Like on Sunday, you want to meet up with your friends or whatever, but every time you do that, you don't get your shopping done. Then you either need to reschedule your shopping or you need to meet up with them an hour later, right? So we need to be very clear on that. We need to schedule it out, and this goes for everything in your life, right? And again, we're not talking about a really rigid plan like, oh, I'm going to wake up and it's going to be exactly to the minute. No, that's not what we're talking about. But we need to have a rough idea of, okay, in the morning, I'm cooking my food before I go to the gym or before I go to work or whatever it is. You need to have that plan of action. And if you don't have that plan of action, it's always going to be haphazard. And you're always going to find yourself, wondering, oh, why can't I get the results? Or why can't I do this? And, it's because you don't have a schedule. You don't have something that is set almost in stone where this is what's being done before I get on with my other tasks, right? Same with training. Like, when are you going to train? If you have body composition goals that you want to achieve and you have strength goals, performance goals, whatever it is, like, when are you actually going to be training, right? Like, are you going to be training in the morning? Are you a morning person? Does that fit your schedule? Are you going to be training in the afternoon after work? Like, when are we going to be doing this? We need to have that schedule. It can't be haphazard. Like, yes, some people can get away with having a haphazard schedule, but as soon as you get busy, that haphazard schedule, goes out the door, right? Like, you see this all the time. College students, classic example, they basically don't have to go to class half the time. They have a haphazard schedule. They're drinking some nights and, it's all over the place, but they can get pretty good results in the gym because they could just spend 2-3 hours in the middle of the day going to the gym, right? So this is one of those things where, okay, that's fantastic for them at that stage in their life, but as soon as exams roll around, now all of a sudden they have an external stressor, boom, their training schedule goes out the window, they can't do what they've normally been doing, so they don't do anything at all, right? Or, they finish college and they're actually in the real world and they're, in a job that's 9 to 5, and now all of a sudden they don't have the ability to actually schedule in their training, and again, it goes out the window. And you see this all the time, people that were great athletes or, great gym goers in their teens and their 20s, and then as soon as they're in the real world, boom, that's all out the window. They don't have that schedule. They haven't actually put the foundations in to actually allow them to do this stuff long term. So don't let that be you. Actually schedule this stuff out and have a plan of action for it, right? And I generally recommend having, here's my plan A, plan B, plan C, so you have some contingencies, so if something goes wrong, you can actually, keep moving forward towards your goals, right? Same with stuff like going to bed. Like, when are you actually going to go to bed? Or is it going to be haphazard? You get home from work or you get home from the gym or whatever, and it's like, I'll just, watch some TV, Netflix or whatever until I'm sleepy. That's haphazard. That's not going to lead to the best results, right? We need to have this schedule, a loose schedule, an idea of, okay, it's, 10 o'clock, I need to start winding down because I want to be asleep by 11 because I know I'm up at 6 a.m. and I need at least 7 hours of sleep. So you need to have a plan of action for this stuff so that you can actually implement it, right? Because if you have no plan of action and you're waking up tired every day and you're like, oh, why am I so tired? And you can't even look back on the day before because there's no record of like, what happened, right? Because you don't have a plan. You can kind of think back, but yeah, you might be able to think about what happened yesterday, but what happened last Wednesday? What happened, 4 weeks ago? You're not going to be able to think about that stuff, and as a result, you're not going to be able to analyze this stuff, right? And the same with stuff like, studying. If you want to be, the top of your field, like obviously I know the health and fitness industry, a lot of professionals in there are really, they're really gunning to improve their knowledge. It's one of the industries that really, they really do try to improve their knowledge, both for a a personal perspective, like they want to make more money and like they enjoy the stuff, they want to get better results for themselves, but also so they can get better results with their clients, etc. Right? So if you have study goals, you have education goals, like how are you actually going to schedule that out? Does that mean that you're going to do a half an hour every day, an hour every day? Are you going to just do an entire day of 8 hours of study? Like, what are we actually doing? Because you can say that you have education goals, you have study goals, but if you actually don't schedule it out and it's just haphazard, like, yeah, you can move the needle forward and you can progress your knowledge, but it's not going to be systematic. It's not going to be cohesive, because you're going to be left at the whim of what you're feeling on that day. It's going to be I was supposed to study this week, but not really feeling it today. I'll do it another day. And that's not good enough, right? Because you're going to have topics that you need to study that you're not really all that motivated, you're not really all that interested in, right? But it helps your knowledge in other aspects. So we need to have a schedule for that stuff. We need to actually sit down, schedule it out, right? So all of that stuff, whatever the goal is, whatever the tasks are, we need to schedule it out. Now, I use Google Calendar for this. It's fairly handy. You can just be like, right, that half-hour block, that's what I'm doing in this half-hour block. This hour block here, this is what I'm doing. And again, you don't have to be like micromanaged down to the minute, but the more you do this, the better you get at it. Because one of the common things that you see people say about scheduling stuff out is, I don't know how long these tasks are going to take, right? And that's fair enough. We have two things to contend with there, right? First of all, if you don't know how long the task is going to take, you're not going to know that until you actually get into it, right? But you can still schedule out, okay, well, this task is, it normally takes me some amount of time to do this task, like this style of task, whatever it is, it's usually 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 hours, whatever it is, right? So schedule that in. You can account for some variability in knowing how long a task is going to take, right? You might go over your budget, you might go under your budget, but we need to have some sort of idea, right? And then the second thing is, there is a thing called Parkinson's law, where basically the time it takes to do a task is completely proportional to the time you'll allot to doing that task, right? So if you have a task to do and you're like, I have 8 weeks to do it, it's going to take 8 weeks to do, right? Whereas if you use that same task and you're like, I have a week to do this, it's going to get done in a week, right? So we can look at it like that. We can leverage that to our advantage and go, right, I have 2 hours to do this task. I need to get it done, right? So you need to schedule it out. Yes, there's going to be some variability in terms of your perfectness, in terms of getting it absolutely dialed in to, it's going to take me exactly 2 hours and a half to do this. That might not be possible. It might not be accurate, but at least you have some sort of idea. And the thing about it is, you do get better at this stuff over time, so once you've been doing this for a while, you will get better at it. You'll be like, okay, I am actually more accurately able to say this type of task takes me 30 minutes, whereas this type of task takes me 2 hours, right? So that is something that, again, comes with practice, and you don't get that practice unless you actually do it, right? So you actually have to sit down, schedule this stuff out. Again, I use Google Calendar. It's really handy. You just block off certain chunks of time, and then you're like, right, there's my week. That's the plan for the week. Now, of course, things crop up, your car might break down, your friend needs help, whatever, but at least you know what you're missing out on. If you have no schedule, you have no idea what you're missing out on in terms of, I'm supposed to be doing these things, but I have to do X, Y, and Z instead. Like, you can then shuffle your calendar around, right? Rather than coming to the end of the week and going, wow, I have actually so many tasks left to do. Because that's what happens. People literally put it on the long finger, push it off, continually push it off, and then all of a sudden you wake up like 2 years later and you're like, geez, I actually haven't moved towards my goal in the slightest. I was ticking the box with some things, but I wasn't really doing the high impact things because they took more time, it took more planning, and I just wasn't willing to actually sit down, plan this stuff out, and schedule this stuff out, right? And this also brings me to the point of motivation versus discipline, right? So a motivated person is, you go, I'm really motivated, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to be like, happy days, let's enjoy myself here, right? That's fine. Motivation is great. Motivation can really help you, get going, but we don't want to rely on motivation, right? We want to rely on discipline, right? And the only way you can be disciplined is if you have an accurate plan of action, right? So discipline, like, you don't have to be you don't have to be motivated to go to your job. You go to your job because you need to eat, you need to pay your bills, right? So you need to make money, so you're using discipline there. You're using discipline to go, I need to go be in work by 8 o'clock, that means I have to leave at this time. And the reason I'm going in here, even though I don't want to, I wake up groggy, I don't really like my job, but I'm going in because I'm disciplined. Why are you using discipline? Why are you using like that sort of stuff. You're really like almost laser focused in terms of getting this done, especially if you're a conscientious individual. You're laser focused in getting this stuff done when it's someone else's goals. You're working for someone else. But as soon as we talk about your own goals, you know, the hopes, dreams, aspirations that you have, all of a sudden it's, oh, I have to be motivated to do that. Fuck motivation. Like, yeah, it's nice to have, right? It's nice to be motivated. But discipline, use discipline. It's far, far more effective in terms of actually getting stuff done. And the only way you're going to be able to instill this in yourself is if you set a schedule, if you set a plan in place, and then you actually start doing it. Yeah, you're not going to be motivated some days. You know, some days I don't want to train. Some days I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Some days I'm like, I just, you know, it's an hour before the class and I'm like, I need to start, you know, thinking about getting ready, and I'm like, will I skip it today? I don't let that happen. I don't let those thoughts enter my head, because I'm like, right, I'm just going to go to the class. I'm just disciplined in terms of I'm going to show up. Look, if it's a fucking terrible class and I really didn't enjoy it, at least I showed up, you know, at least I contributed somewhat towards my goals. Now, obviously, we do still have to listen to our body. Like, you feel like shit, you think you're going to get injured and you're like, oh, my body's breaking down. Like, obviously listen to that stuff, but still, we want to use discipline to our advantage. We don't want to just rely on motivation, right? This is one of the biggest fallacies in the health and fitness world. You have to focus on motivation. You have to be motivated. Yeah, motivation is great for, you know, starting you going. It gets that momentum going, but it's discipline that keeps you going, right? And the way we actually do that on a day-to-day basis then, so we've scheduled out our week, we've done all the month or whatever, however long it takes you to, that you think, you know, this is what needs to be done across the whatever. We've scheduled the stuff out. We have a good idea. We're going to review that constantly because it's always going to be changing. What we do on an actual day, this is really important. So on the actual day, what I often do in the morning, excuse me, what I actually do in the morning is I'll actually visualize what needs to be done that day, right? So I'll sit down. You don't need to sit down, you can stand up, you can be doing other tasks as well, but in your head you need to kind of go through that tape of, this is what needs to be done, okay, this is the task list, this is what needs to be done today, okay, you know, you're just going through it in your mind's eye, and you're just visualizing how the day is going to go, what's going to occur, how you're going to get over those challenges, and, you know, exactly map out the day in your mind, right? And then you need to center yourself. So you actually need to sit down, you know, again, if you're starting work straight away, you can, you know, do this. I often find it really helpful for, you know, keeping me focused when I'm just about to start a task. You just center yourself. Now, people use different techniques for this. People use meditation, people use like hypnosis, people use like all kinds of strategies for this stuff. But either way, we need to be centered. We don't want to be thinking about the million other tasks that we need to be doing, right? You've got them scheduled out, you've got them written down, you're not going to forget them, right? So you don't need to think about them. You don't need to be thinking about that other thing, right? Yeah, it can be in the back of your mind, very, very, very low percentage of your brain power being, you know, put towards that, but we're focused on the task at hand, because you know this task is as important, or if not more important than this other task, because you've, you know, written out your priority list, right? So you just center yourself, get focused on the task. All the other tasks can wait until you're done this task, and then we just get on with it, right? So we actually center ourselves, and then we get ahead with the task, right? You just get after it, you get it done, whatever the task is, you do whatever needs to be done, right? What I also often like to do is set some sort of external accountability on that task, because it's very easy in this day and age, you know, especially if you work on a computer, especially if you know, are on social media or whatever, like, you know, people in the health and fitness world, they're often using social media to get clients, to interact with their followers, etc., right? It can be very easy to lose 2, 3, 4, 5 hours doing one task because you've actually been scrolling along TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, right? So we need to set some sort of external accountability tools, or use, I should say, some sort of external accountability tools to keep us on point. Now, this could be, you know, blocking out different websites on your computer. It could be using, like, you know, timers, you know, like, oh, this task is going to take me 30 minutes. Here's a timer set for 30 minutes. You know, maybe it is like, I know a lot of people these days, they actually record themselves and like put it up online, they stream it, so people can keep them externally on point, where it's like, oh, look, I see you're slipping there. You're supposed to be you said you were going to do 8 hours of study, and here you are on your phone, you know? So stuff like that, right? And we want to set some sort of external accountability so that we actually stay on point, because again, it's very easy to just let your mind wander, and it takes you a little while to get back into the groove of things, right? We want to stay as in or on point as possible for as long as possible, right? And then at the end of the day, you know, hopefully everything's gone well, but what we're going to do is we're going to review the day. What went well, what didn't go well, right? Okay, so how do we overcome that problem in the future, right? Oh, this happened, these were my reactions. Okay, in future, this is what I'd rather see happen. that's what I'm going to try to implement in future. Oh, I thought this task would take 6 hours and it actually only took 3 hours, and I actually just wasted the 3 hours. I didn't use them to get ahead on my other tasks. I just fucked around, right? Or conversely, you may, oh, this task I thought it was going to take an hour, but it actually took 3 hours, so now I'm behind on some of this other stuff, right? Are you going to reschedule that out onto your other training days, or other work days, whatever it is, depending on the task? We need to really just think about that stuff, right? So that's the thing. Then we're going to plan ahead for the next day. So at the end of the day, you've reviewed your tasks, you've gone over the day, how it went, and then we're going to plan for the next day, right? So planning for the next day is the same process. What's my day going to look like? How is it scheduled out? Is that schedule still working? Cool, fantastic, happy days. Anyway, guys, that was today's video. We will see you in the next one.